Okay. Last week we started with the series with Romans 8:28. In all things, God works everything for good for those who love God and serve according to his purpose. Great promise, wasn't it? This week we're going to look at an Old Testament passage in 2 Kings chapter 4. I'm going to read from it in just a moment. And in this storyline, there are 5 people. There's the prophet of God, who is referred to as the man of God, and his name is Elisha. Say that with me. Elisha, not to be confused with Elijah, but Elisha. And then he has a servant who's called Gehazi, and he is going to be part of this storyline as he's communicating back and forth with the other people. And the other people involved, there's 3 of them. They're nameless. One is called a woman, one is called a husband, and the other is a child. So we have 5 characters, only 2 of them have names. Let's look at it together. You know what? I know you've been standing a while, but I'd like you to stand for this because I really want you to stay engaged in what's being said. And it will be a little while. So if you get tired, just go ahead and sit down. Nobody is going to think anything else about it. They won't frown at you or anything like that. So we're going to look in chapter 4, and we're going to begin in verse 8. So it'll be up on the screen, okay? One day, Elisha went to Shunammite, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. Now, they call her a well-to-do woman. That phrase didn't come about until 1830. That wasn't like a thing. King James was written in 1611. King James says she was a great woman. So regardless of how you see it, the Hebrews seem to say that she was a woman of means. And so regardless how you see it, she had resources, she had influence, and she decided she was going to use her influence and her resources to bless this man of God, this prophet. Anytime he came to their house, she would feed him. But she goes beyond that even. Now, this is what hospitality is all about, right? Is reaching out to other people. We have people who do a wonderful job of this. The Isleys, the Hurls, the Baileys, and I hate to even start the names because so many of you are fantastic at showing hospitality. That's what this woman did for Elisha, but she takes it beyond just normal hospitality. Let's keep reading. She said to her husband, "I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp for him, and then he can stay there whenever he comes to us." So some of you don't know this. So they're taking their resources, they're building a room so that when this guy comes by, it's a place for him to rest, okay? Some of you don't know this, but Chap Daddy has been our pastor of the Salvage Yard Biker Church for 6 years. He still lives in Kankakee, Illinois. He comes almost from Chicago, and he drives back and forth each week. What you might not know is that Al and Nancy, who are sitting right up here in the front, they live in Glendale, and they have opened their house to him. They have an upstairs, just like this passage. They have an upstairs, and Chap Daddy comes and goes as he wants, just like Elisha did. And he might get in at 1 o'clock in the morning because he's been out ministering to somebody, or he might leave very early. And when he does, their dogs are probably barking. I mean, it's an inconvenience for them. And yet they have opened their house free of charge for 6 years. I think we ought to thank them for that right now. Beautiful. I mean, the generosity is like through the roof, and that's what's taking place here. Okay. Now, it says this. One day, verse 11, I think I'm at. One day, when Elisha came, he went up to his room and lay down, and he said to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her, and she stood before him. And Elisha said to him, "Tell her that you have gone to all of this trouble for us. Now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army?" And she replied, "I have a home among my people." In other words, I have everything that I need. I'm right here at home. Verse 14, "What can be done for her?" Elisha asked. Gehazi said, "She has no son, and her husband is old." Now, you understand what's taking place here. If somebody does something for you, I'm not talking about you paid them to do something, but when they just out of the kindness of their heart, they do something for you, we might often write a thank you card, right? Or Dwayne Bentley was up here a few weeks back. He had started the SRT, our safety response team, and we gave him a little card with just a little tiny gift in there. We could never pay him for all of the years and his of planning and strategizing and the investment that he had. We just couldn't. But it's a token of our appreciation. We have people that mow lawn around here all summer long. I mean, it would cost us thousands of dollars if we had to pay for that. And they volunteer to do it. At the end of the year, we might give them a $25 gift card or something, but with a thank you saying, thank you for serving. They're not doing it for the money. They're doing it for Jesus, but we want to show our appreciation. You understand what I'm saying? That's what's taking place here. So Elisha's saying, hey, ask her what can be done. She's been so kind to us. So see what we can do for her. And Gehazi is an observant kind of person. He'd be good for the SRT, all right? Because he's paying attention. And Gehazi is looking around and he doesn't see any swing sets. He doesn't see any strollers. He's looking around. He sees a sporty two-seater in the parking lot and not a minivan. And he says, you know what? They don't have any children. They don't have any children. And then we continue to read. Then Elisha said, call her. And so he called her, and she stood in the doorway. And about this time next year, Elisha said, you will hold a son in your arms. No, my Lord, she objected. Please, man of God, don't mislead your servant. So, I mean, you can imagine, first of all, it's like, no, I can't raise a kid at this age. But also, there was this longing. She wanted to have a child. But she's well past childbearing age. And so she's, in a sense, saying, don't tease me like that. Don't tease me like that. I don't want to get my hopes up, all right? Now, verse 17. But the woman became pregnant, and the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. The child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was in the reapers. He said to his father, my head, my head. His father told a servant, carry him to his mother. Kids always want to go to their mother when they're sick, don't they? And I learned very early on that I was no substitute for mom. I mean, if kids were sick or they were hurt, they wanted her, and that's what's taking place here. Verse 20, after the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and she laid him on the bed of the man of God and then shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, please send me one of the servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return. Why go to him today, he asked. It's not the new moon or the Sabbath. In other words, it seems as though he didn't know the son had died. Sent him with the servant, hadn't heard back. That's all right, she said. Verse 24, she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, lead on, don't slow down for me unless I tell you. And so she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, the man of God, Elisha, said to his servant Gehazi, look, there is the Shunammite. Run now and meet her and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? And is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. You may be seated. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of God stands forever. Elisha, the man of God, asked, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she responds, in a sense, it's going to be okay. It is well. Her response is a bit surprising, don't you think? I mean, her child had just died, apparently of maybe an aneurysm or something of that sort. You would expect that if he asked, is everything okay? She would say, no, of course not. My toddler is dead. It's not okay. It's not going to be okay. It's almost as if she's answering another question. It seems like an irrational response. Are you okay? About 40 years ago, a friend of a friend fell from a 2-story building. It was a construction site. He fell to the ground, broke nearly every bone in his body. He lived, but broke nearly every bone in his body. He was knocked unconscious, and when he came to, he said that when he came to, the first thing he remembers is somebody leaning over him, and they ask, "Are you okay?" He broke nearly every bone of his body, and they ask, "Are you okay?" We ask some of the silliest questions sometimes. I'm eating at a restaurant one time, and behind me there's 2 guys talking. They hadn't been together in a while, apparently, just by their conversation. And the one guy says to the other guy, "Hey, I went to Steve's funeral last week." And the other guy says, "Oh, did Steve die?" We ask the craziest things. The prophet says, "Is it well?" It can't be well. I mean, it just can't. Her child, her only child, just died. She fed him breakfast, send him off, and he comes back, and he dies by lunchtime. It can't be well. How could it be? Where did this confidence that she has, where did that come from? And the only answer is it has to come from her deep relationship with God and her faith in the man of God, the prophet of God. She had to have possessed some type of strength and contentment that only God could do within her. And contentment's important in life, amen? In 1 Timothy it says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world and we can take nothing out of it," amen. "But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." Paul kind of tags on to that in Philippians chapter 4. He says, "I have learned to be content no matter the circumstance." That's strong vocabulary, especially coming from his situation, right, Bill? I mean, he's in prison. He's in a dungeon. He has been shipwrecked. He's been beaten. He's been snake bit. False accusations came against him, and yet he is saying, "I've learned to be content." Well, where did that come from? Where did that strength come from? Well, he says it just in 2 verses later. "I can do all things through Christ," read it with me, "who strengthens me." I like the Phillips translation. It says, "who pours his strength through me." Paul knew where his strength came from. Through each of his trials, in a sense, Paul is saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Now, we are never told this woman's name. We are only told her story. Her story demonstrates her faith and trust in God. Perhaps you've known people like her who have gone through unbearable things, and yet they seem to do it with grace. Certainly not ease, but they seem to do it with grace. Many years ago, I read a book called Amish Grace. It was about the 2006 Nickel Mines, Pennsylvania Amish shooting. Some of you remember that? 5 little girls, Amish girls, were lined up against a wall, and they were shot and killed. And as I read this book, I couldn't put it down. We were actually on vacation in Destin, and later on, you know what, I was thinking about this between the service. I think it might have been the year that I interviewed for the church here on Zoom. I think it was the same year that I was reading this. It hit me later on. But anyhow, so I'm reading this book, and I was fascinated that within hours of these girls being killed, some of the mothers of the girls went to the home of the gunman, and they ministered to his wife. They brought food and they prayed with her. And I can remember thinking, how did they do that? I mean, they're grieving the loss of their children. Her husband killed them. And yet they go and they minister to her because they realize that she too was hurting. That's remarkable, is it not? Where does that strength come from? Several years ago, It was on Labor Day weekend. We had just gone through the long weekend, and Kankakee First Church in Kankakee, Illinois, they won the tournament that year. And their pastor, Pastor Ed Heck, was here to celebrate. And it had gone late in the night on Monday night, and so he stayed up in Westchester at a hotel. I was going into work on Tuesday morning, and I get a call that he is very, very sick, and he wanted to know if I could pick him up from the hotel and drive him to the hospital, and so I did. And what began to happen after that is people started showing up, friends of theirs. Kathy, his wife, was not here that weekend. She drove all the way from Kankakee. My wife was up there. We spent the better part of the day up there. And in the afternoon, we're in his room, and we're talking to the surgeon, and the surgeon is saying that this is going to be like a 5-week recovery. He is a very, very sick man, and he's going to be in the hospital for a long time. And I am standing here, Tracy is standing here, and the surgeon is standing there, and Kathy, Ed's wife, is here. And Ed is in the bed right here to my right. And as we're talking, and the surgeon is explaining some things, Ed like stiffens up, and then he just relaxed, and he died right in front of us. We're in the room. And bells start going off, and it was like something on a movie on TV. 12 to 15 medical staff come running in. They're pushing us out, and I can see from my viewpoint, and it was a violent thing. I mean, they're beating on his chest. They're trying to get a pulse rate again, or his heart beating. Eventually, they get the paddles, and they're doing everything they can. And a short time later, they come out, and they inform us that they were not able to revive him, and Ed had passed into eternity. Kathy said, can I see him? And they said, sure. And so we walk back into the room, and there are about 5 nurses still in here. You remember this, don't you? About 5 nurses in there, and they are sobbing uncontrollably. Thank God for the nurses. And they did not, yeah, you can do that. They did not know Ed. He had only been in there that day. He hadn't been up in that room but maybe a couple of hours. But they took their job very seriously, and they were so distraught that they had lost somebody on their watch. And they were just sobbing. And Kathy walks into the room. She doesn't go to her husband's side. She starts consoling these nurses. I mean, she's hugging them, and she's saying, it's all right. It's okay. He knew Jesus. He's in a better place. And we're sitting there just sobbing, like, how is she able to do this? When she's grieving herself, and did she grieve? Oh, yes, she did. She's been grieving ever since. But in that moment, God gave her something that she didn't even know she had to say, it's well. It's okay. The Shunammite woman loses her son. She's too old to have another. She is asked, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child? And she says, it is well. It's a kind of response that we see in David's writings of the Psalms. By the way, we'll be doing a series on Psalms in just 3 weeks or so. David would cry out, Lord, do something about my enemies, and how long do I have to suffer with this? But he always would end with saying, but I trust you. But I depend on you. I can almost like see this woman. She's on her donkey, and she's making her way toward this prophet, this man of God, and she's out there all by herself. Her servant is just ahead of her. I can almost picture her saying the very words of David. I will lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. God is my refuge and my strength and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, I will not fear. Now, those are David's words. I understand that. But they express the kind of trust and faith that this woman had as she declared, "It is well." I want to say to you this morning that if you're going through hard times yourself, don't overlook this woman. Don't overlook her faith. Don't overlook her response to tragedy. Learn from it. Model it. In the midst of devastating loss, she says, "It is well. It's going to be okay." "But you lost your son. How can you say that?" Well, I've been serving God long enough. He was with me back then. He's with me now. And he'll be with me in the future. I have history to rely on. And she says, "It is well." It occurs to me that all of us could probably use a little more "it is well" kind of faith. Sometimes we don't know how we will respond until we're in the midst of it. Most of you know our story. My wife and I, we lost our first daughter, Rachel Renee. She lived for about an hour. It was heartbreaking, shocking, and yet through all of it, the moments of that evening, the funeral, we will both testify that we felt this peace of God that we didn't know existed in times of crisis. It was the first major thing either of us had ever dealt with. But God was there. I guess I would liken it to the Apostle Paul, who said that not to be anxious because we would have a peace that surpasses what? Understanding. It transcends our thoughts. And sometimes we don't know that until we're in the middle of it. Horatio Spafford was a man who knew a lot of sorrow in his life. He experienced devastating personal tragedies. In 1871, his young son died of pneumonia. And shortly after, his business investments were wiped out because of the Chicago fire. In 1873, he sent his wife and 4 daughters to Europe on a ship. And that ship collided with another ship, and it went down, and he lost all 4 of his daughters in one catastrophe. His wife survived. A short time later, he got on another ship to join with her so they could grieve together. And he told the captain of the ship, "When we get to the place where my daughters lost their lives, would you please let me know?" And so when they got to that place, the captain said, "This is where the ship went down." And he began at that point to write the lyrics to a famous song that we have sung around here many, many times. Appropriately titled, what? It is well. It is well. You know, I've sung this song all of my life. And I can tell you that I've sung it when it was true, and I've sung it when it wasn't true. It's a whole lot more fun to sing when it's true. And in a moment, as we sing, if it's true for you, sing it as a testimony. Maybe you want to raise your hands. Sing it as a time of worship to the Lord. If it isn't true, I invite you to come forward to bring whatever it is that is keeping it from being true. Maybe it's sin in your life. Perhaps it's anxiety. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's overwhelming grief that you're dealing with. Whatever it is, would you just bring it so that you can leave here with the same testimony that the Shunammite woman had? My circumstances haven't changed, but it's well. It's going to be okay. I invite you to stand. I invite you to respond however appropriately you think you need to.